Spoilers for the following. Is it possible for someone's story to be properly followed up by a different author? Is it better for a burning torch to be passed to someone else or to just die out? Let's find out. So the most recent God of War game has been revealed, and it is stirring up quite the hornet's nest. It is a spin-off game that doesn't star the titular protagonist Kratos, and instead focuses on his second dead wife, Faye. Outrage ensues. I have heard quite the few amount of accusations of sexist fake fans, and I'm not going to deny their existence. But I do feel like supporters of this title are waving off other detractors that are unhappy about this change for different reasons. Possibly more reasonable reasons. One such detractor is David Jaffe, the original creator of the God of War franchise. Now, for quite a while, David has been unhappy with the newer games that weren't made by him, but by his former developer partner, Cory Barlog. David's original intention with the series protagonist Kratos was to create an iconic static character, which is a character that, though may go through arcs, ultimately does not change through personality or appearance. Though he was initially fine with the quasi-reboot sequel God of War 2018, David has since criticized the newer games. He is not happy with the new games slowly turning Kratos from a raging Olympian into a much calmer, wiser father figure. So you can probably imagine how David feels about the latest game not having Kratos in the spotlight. But does that automatically make the newer games bad? No. In fact, having played all of the games except Ascension and the PSP titles, I do believe the newer games are better than the older ones. At the very least, I think they are better written, as the newer games have little to no plot holes while the older games have a few inconsistencies, like with the magic system of Pandora's Box. However, the newer games are quite different. Dare I say, needlessly different in a few areas. I can understand some of the differences, as at the time, fans were a bit fatigued by the same formula of the older games. So they switch it up in God of War 2018, and the game gets heavily praised for its updated combat and deep storytelling. But I do wonder if it's possible to accomplish that without all of the other changes the game has. For you see, it is not just the combat and the storytelling that is different. The newer games are quieter and slowly paced, while the older games were quicker and much more bombastic. The new games are more grounded and cinematic, while the old games are crazier and a bit more cartoonish. And above all else, the older games were much edgier. It's what the God of War franchise was originally most known for. Now, I wouldn't blame the developers for toning down the edgy nature a bit. I can imagine the corporate higher-ups at Sony Entertainment no longer being as thrilled with Kratos, making out with scantily clad women. It would no longer make a lick of sense in the context of the newer games anyhow. But in general, the new games lack the edgy style of the original games. Take the enemy minions, for example. In the older games, the minions were these grotesque, spiky freaks of nature that could easily fit on a death metal poster. In the newer games, even the most monstrous creatures are a bit more generic, looking closer to their original mythological renditions, even if they don't act as such. And I don't think it needed to be this way. The newer games could have added all the wonderful new features they're praised for, while still keeping some of the older features. I think they still can have all of the creatures look more edgier without taking away what they represent. I think the landscapes could still look akin to the original level aesthetics without taking away the stunning beauty of the Norse environment. And I think they could still have a quicker pace and a more bombastic soundtrack without interrupting the quieter moments. And goodness, do I not want the quieter moments to be interrupted. No. Some of the best moments in the new games would not work if they were accompanied by a roaring choir and beating anvils. But I do think some of the action scenes could have benefited from such. Perhaps. Just a bit. Ultimately, I think the newer games are great games, but not so great sequels to the franchise they're a part of. And as such, I think this latest game will be a great sequel to the newer games, but not to the franchise as a whole. While I don't believe Cory had any spiteful intent on erasing the older God of War games, I do think he strayed the series too far from its original identity. And while I like the newer games more, I don't think that's really fair. And I think the God of War franchise is a good showcase of the risk of a set of stories being continued by different people, and it's not the only one. One of my biggest issues with sequels made by different creators is they tend to not pinpoint the exact style. Like they're uncanny reflections of the original product at best, usually as a result of having those pesky little differences. For example, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse has many more slower-paced, drawn-out conversations between characters compared to its Into predecessor. The Lego Movie, the second part, has jokes that slow down the plot over the jokes in the first movie that run alongside it. And that's excluding sequels that are straight up the opposite to the original story. I'm not talking about those. Even cherished sequels can have this uncanny contrast. Toy Story 3, as fantastically made that movie is, doesn't necessarily have the exact same type of wit that the previous two movies have. At this point, you probably assume that I hold a needlessly high standard for movie sequels to match the exact proper vibe to the original, and you are correct, my friend. But only because I know it's not impossible. Enter The Empire Strikes Back, the Star Wars sequel that was not directed by George Lucas. And yet it is considered one of the greatest sequels of all time, and a great blueprint to what makes Star Wars Star Wars. And it's not like the films are identical to each other. Empire Strikes Back is more serious, obviously, but it also has more cinematic shots and less stilted dialogue. It didn't copy the original Star Wars film, it just knew exactly what to add, what to take away, and what to keep. So obviously, a story getting followed up by a different creator doesn't automatically lead to a disaster. Hell, there are sequels out there made by the exact same creators of the original masterpiece, and they still somehow end up being the cinematic equivalent to getting your nostrils surgically attached to where the sun don't shine. At the end of the day, whether or not the torch should get passed depends on the story itself. But if the torch's flame mustn't die out, then it needs to be passed to the right person. Preferably not the one holding a bucket of water. Thank you for sticking around to the end. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, and share this video to every specimen you know. I'd appreciate it. And check out the bombastic science comic strips that I post on various sites every day, 6 days a week. If you wish to support me, you can become a Patreon member of mine and see the comics 2 weeks early, or you can witness them 1 week early on Webtoon. Links in the description. Now that's enough from me for today. Go write your own stories, and for pity's sake, make sure they're well written.